Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stuttarishata Shishimad Divine Grace Shila Isi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Krantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Gaura Premanande Haribo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai. Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 4, chapter 26, text 8. Anyatha karma kurvano.
Anyatha karma kurvano.
Anyatha karma kurvano.
Anyatha karma kurvano.
Manarudho nibatyate.
Manarudho nibatyate.
Manarudho nibatyate.
Manarudho nibatyate.
Guna pravaha patito.
Guna pravaha patito.
Guna pravaha patito.
Guna pravaha patito.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Anyata karma kurvano.
Anyatha karma kurvano.
Manarudho nibatyate.
Manarudho nibatyate.
Guna pravaha patito.
Guna pravaha patito.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Please chant.
Anyata karma kurvano.
Anyata karma kurvano.
Manarudho nivadyate.
Manarudho
nibadyate.
Guna pravaha patito.
Nasta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Anyatha karma kurvano.
Anyatha karma kurvano.
Manarudho nibadyate.
Manarudho nibadyate.
Guna pravaha patito.
Guna pravaha patito.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Mataji's. Sorry. No, please go ahead.
Anyata karma kurvano. Anyata karma
Kurvano.
Manarudho nibadyate.
Manarudho
nibadyate. Guna pravaha patito.
Guna pravaha patito.
Nasta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Mataji's.
Anyatha karma kurvano.
Anyatha karma kurvano.
Manarudho nibadyate.
Manarudho nibadyate.
Guna pravaha patito.
Guna pravaha patito.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Nashta pragyo vrajatyadaha.
Anyatha.
Anyatha.
Otherwise.
Otherwise.
Karma.
Karma.
Fruitive activities. Kurvanaha.
Kurvanaha.
While acting.
While acting.
Mana aruddhaha.
Manarudhaha.
Being influenced by false prestige.
Being influenced by false prestige.
Nibadhyate.
Nibadyate.
One becomes entangled.
One becomes entangled.
Guna pravaha.
Guna pravaha.
By the influence of the material qualities.
By the influence of material qualities.
Patitaha.
Patitaha.
Fallen.
Fallen.
Nashta pragyaha.
Nashta pragyaha.
Bereft of all intelligence.
Bereft of all intelligence.
Brajati.
Vrajati.
Thus he goes.
As it goes.
Adaha.
Adaha.
Down.
Down.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Otherwise, a person who acts whimsically falls down due to false prestige. Thus he becomes involved in the laws of nature, which are composed of the three qualities: goodness, passion, and ignorance. In this way, a living entity becomes devoid of his real intelligence and becomes perpetually lost in the cycle of birth and death. Thus he goes up and down from a microbe in stool to a high position in the Brahmaloka planet. The purport is quite long, and we would also like to speak about Ramananda Roy today because it's his disappearance day. So now 45 minutes. Yeah, let's read the whole purport. You have something to read along, maybe it will be easier to follow. It's 4:26:8. There are many important words in this verse. The first is anyatha, otherwise, which indicates one who does not care for the Vedic rules and regulations. The rules and regulations laid down in the Vedas are called Shastra Vidhi. Bhagavad Gita clearly states that one who does not accept the Shastra Vidhi or rules and regulations mentioned in the Vedic scriptures and acts whimsically or puffed up with false pride never attains perfection in this life, nor does he attain happiness or liberation from the material condition. Ya Shastra Vidin Utsrichya Vartate Kamakarataha Nasa Siddhing Avapnoti Nasukang na Parangatim. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. Bhagavad Gita 16:23. Thus one who is deliberately transgressing the rules and regulations of the Shastras is simply involving himself more and more in material existence in the three modes of material nature. Human society should therefore follow the Vedic principles of life, which are summarized in Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, life in material existence will continue. Foolish persons do not know that the soul is passing through 8,400,000 species of life. By the gradual process of evolution, when one comes to the human form of life, he is supposed to follow the rules and regulations laid down in the Vedas. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the living entity since time immemorial is suffering the threefold miseries of material nature due to his demoniac attitude, which is his spirit of revolt against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna also confirms this in Bhagavad Gita 15:7. Mamaivangsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashastani indriyani prakritistani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal, fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Every living entity is part and parcel of God. There is no reason for the living entities being put into the miserable threefold condition of material existence, but that he voluntarily accepts material existence on the false pretext of becoming an enjoyer. To save him from this horrible condition, the Lord has given all the Vedic literatures in his incarnation of Vyasadeva. It is therefore said, Krishna bulise jiv anadi bahirmukh ataiva maya tare deya sangsara dukkha. By forgetting Krishna, the living entity has become materialistic since time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy of Krishna is giving him different types of miseries in material existence. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 20:117. Maya mukta jiver nahi svata Krishna gyan jivere kripaya kaila Krishna Veda Puran. When a living entity is enchanted by the external energy, he cannot revive his original Krishna consciousness independently. Due to such circumstances, Krishna has kindly given him the Vedic literatures such as the 4 Vedas and 18 Puranas. Madhya 20:122. Every human being should therefore take advantage of the Vedic instructions. Otherwise, one will be bound by his whimsical activities and will be without any guide. The word manaruddhaha is also very significant in this verse. Under the pretext of becoming great philosophers and scientists, men throughout the whole world are working on the mental platform. Such men are generally non-devotees, due to not caring for the instructions given by the Lord to the first living creature, Lord Brahma. The Bhagavatam therefore says, Harav abhaktasya kuto mahatguna mano ratena asati davato bahye. A person who is a non-devotee has no good qualifications because he acts on the mental platform. One who acts on the mental platform has no change. One who acts on the mental platform has to change his standard of knowledge periodically. We consequently see that one philosopher may disagree with another philosopher, and one scientist may put forward a theory contradicting the theory of another scientist. All of this is due to their working on the mental platform without a standard of knowledge. In the Vedic instructions, however, the standard of knowledge is accepted. Even though it may sometimes appear that the statements are contradictory, because the Vedas are the standard of knowledge, even though they may appear contradictory, they should be accepted. If one does not accept them, he will be bound by the material conditions. The material conditions are described in this verse as guna pravaha, the flowing of the three modes of material nature. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur therefore says in a song, Miche mayara vashe yacha beshe kacha habudrubu bhai. Why are you suffering? Why are you sometimes being drowned in the waves of material nature and sometimes coming to the surface? Jeev Krishna Das, E Vishwas, Kalle Ta Ar Dukkha Nai. Please, therefore, accept yourself as the servant of Krishna. Then you will be freed from all miseries. As soon as one surrenders to Krishna and accepts the perfect standard of knowledge, which is Bhagavad Gita as it is, he then comes out of the material modes of nature and does not fall down and lose his knowledge. Nashta Pragya. The word Pragya means perfect knowledge, and Nashta Pragya means one who has no perfect knowledge. One who does not have perfect knowledge has only mental speculation. By such mental speculation, one falls down and down into a hellish condition of life. By transgressing the laws laid down in the Shastras, one cannot become pure in heart. When one's heart is not purified, one acts according to the three material modes of nature. These activities are very nicely explained in the verses 1 through 6 of the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita 2.45 further explains, Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtraigunya Pavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nityasatvasto Nirjoga Kshema Atmavan. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna, be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. The entire world and all material knowledge is within the three modes of material nature. One has to transcend these modes, and to attain that platform of transcendence, one must follow the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become perfect in life. Otherwise, one will be knocked down by the waves of the material nature's three modes. This is further explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.30 in the words of Prahlad Maharaj. Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova Mito Vipadyeta Grihavratanam Adanta Gobhir Vishatam Tamishram Punascharvita Charvananam. Materialistic persons who are too much engaged in material enjoyment and who who do not know anything beyond their material experiences are carried by the whims of material nature. They live a life characterized by chewing the chewed, and they are controlled by their uncontrolled senses. Thus they go down to the darkest regions of hellish life. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitang Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupang Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitang Tvang Sajivang Sadvaitang Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Otherwise, a person who acts whimsically falls down due to false prestige. Thus he becomes involved in the laws of nature, which are composed of the three qualities: goodness, passion, and ignorance. In this way, a living entity becomes devoid of his real intelligence and becomes perpetually lost in the cycle of birth and death. Thus he goes up and down from a microbe in stool to a high position in the Brahmaloka planet. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we have Narada Muni continuing his instructions to King Prachinabarishad. And now we came to the point where Puranjana, he left home, he went out to the forest to hunt. And it's described he went out to the forest and he killed animals. And now Narada Muni is explaining how when one becomes overwhelmed by here it said false prestige, when one is illusioned by the bodily concept of life, then he will become involved with the three modes, and then these modes cover the living entity, and when the living entity is covered, then the real intelligence becomes lost, and due to that fact the living entity will do so many abominable things and then wander in the whole universe. And it's described that the living entity wanders from up to down, down to up, up to down, down to up. from a microbe in stool to Brahmaloka. There is the example given, like when somebody is being punished, sometimes what do? They take the head of the person and put it in the water, so then the person will be, not kind of suffocating, that's the word, suffocating, not getting any air to breathe, and then they will just take him out to take some short breath, and then again put him down and up and down. So that example is actually given, that the jiva in the material world sometimes is enjoying for a short time, taking a breath, but then again going down. It's kind of a punishment, and we know that the material world is also compared to the prison. And what is the shackles in the prison? It's the three modes of material nature who bind the living entity. And this material energy, which comprises these three modes, is very difficult to overcome. Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya durateya. Only when one surrenders to Krishna can one overcome. Like when one is in the prison, only when one gets the sanction of the government, the king, then one can actually go out of the prison. And unless this is the case, the person has to stay in the prison and remain a prisoner, remain encaged. So, you can't hear? I mean, closer, huh? And then Prabhupada in the purport, he's making the point of, in order to overcome or in order to become free, then Krishna gives the Shastras, the Vedic scriptures. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is clearly saying, he's quoting that verse, Prabhupada Shastra Vidin Utricha, that one cannot give up the Vedic scriptures. One has to follow. If one gives up the Vedic scriptures, then he is bound to do mistakes which bind him in this material world. The other day there was a school class, and we were in the library, and usually we give a little bit of philosophical background what we are doing. So then we were speaking about the law of karma, and one student was asking, I was giving the example that you do something and then it will have a reaction. Like when I say something, you might get angry or you might get sad or different kind of reactions. And that person was asking, what if I do something and I don't have the intention to, let's say, make you angry? And then you become angry. So do I also get the karma? It's a very good question. That if you unintentionally do something. And what's your opinion? Have karma? Everybody agrees? No?
No.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think as when we look, perhaps sometimes the spiritual master says something to us and we get angry because we don't want to hear that, so we don't have to take that karma. No?
So you're saying that when the spiritual master says something which makes you angry, then you're not supposed to take the karma.
He is not.
He is not supposed to take the karma. Okay. Interesting example. Okay. Usually the example is given of fire. Prabhupada uses that example. Like if there is fire and the child goes and the child doesn't know how fire acts, if he touches fire, then what will happen? It will burn the hand, even though the child didn't know. And why? Because the element fire, due to nature's law, acts in a certain way. In the same, whatever we do, if we act in the mode of ignorance, if we act in the mode of passion, if we act in the mode of goodness, it will act in a certain way. There is no way to go around this. And therefore it's very important to understand that point. And we can also look in the world, in the material world, there is that understanding is given. Like when you, let's say you don't have the driver's license and you drive out, you just think, let me take the car and I have to go somewhere, and you ride with the car and you go over a red light and the flash will take a picture, you will have to pay the fine. It's not that you can say, I didn't know. I didn't make the driver's license, they didn't tell me. No, because you take the initiative to make the action, then you have to know what is right and what is wrong. Or also we know that if somebody has sexual intercourse and a child is produced, and actually it's proven that the father is that the man is the father of the child, what will happen? He will have to pay. He will have to pay for the child. That's almost, I think, in all the countries, the law. So there is an understanding. You act in a certain way, and then you have to take the consequences. But of course, unfortunately, people in general, they don't know the depth of the law of karma. And so then sometimes even the laws are in a way which are contradictory to the law of karma. Meaning the law of today's world, because it's based on ignorance, it will support something which will actually give you a bad reaction afterwards. So you're allowed to do something even though the law is supposed to protect you from getting the punishment later on. And that's why the Vedic system is the best, because the king is so trained. He is usually a Raja Rishi. He knows the Vedic principles so that he can protect you from getting unnecessary karmic reactions. And it goes to extremes where I know even devotees have a hard time to accept, for example, the death penalty. In the Vedic culture, the death penalty is very... Death penalty? It's when you kill somebody because... And it's also Prabhupada, I think, in the purports, he describes that this is the mercy of the king, because he's taking away the bad karmic reaction from a person who is doing a misdeed, so that in next life he doesn't have to come and suffer that reaction, but he's actually relieved. And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, and it's actually, I find it nice, we can a little bit connect to Ramananda Roy in some way. And I will focus a little bit on that point of scriptures and how important it is to follow. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that I don't have any duties to perform. I can do whatever I like. I'm God, but still I do. And then he says, how is the Sanskrit verse? Of whatever a great man performs, common man follow. Yat yada chariti shrestas. I also tat common man follow. So even though somebody doesn't have to, somebody is free from material conditioning, still Krishna explains he should actually follow that in order to teach others. And we can see in the lives of our acharyas, they never act contradictory to Dharma. Never. So it's important to consider why. Because sometimes devotees on the practicing devotees who are still under the conditioning of material nature, they cheat themselves. Meaning they come in contact with Krishna consciousness, they hear the philosophy, they get the knowledge, and they cheat themselves by misusing the knowledge. By, for example, say, I'm a devotee, it's supposed, devotees don't have to follow all that things. They are transcendental. And that's why I wanted to connect it with Ramananda Roy. You often hear that teaching of Ramananda Roy is being misused also, and we will come to that afterwards. And maybe to understand, because there is some devotees who don't follow everything so strictly, that is there. And like Avadutas, Avadutas, they act in a way which nobody can understand. I remember that somebody once said, Vamshi Das, Babaji? I think he even ate fish or something. I heard something. And I think he was smoking. Of course, there was a reason why he was doing that. He was an Avadut. And so it's described that some disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, they were ordered by him to go and kind of serve him, to give him the bare necessities. He was living in Navadvip, somewhere in Navadvip, and Bhaktisiddhanta told his disciples, you go to him and you give him some rice and whatever so he can do his puja. And then they used to go there, and at one point what they saw was he took his deities and with a rope around their neck threw them into the river Ganges, and he was yelling at them, chastising them. So then they came back to Bhaktisiddhanta, disturbed, and described to him what they saw. And Bhaktisiddhanta only said, from now on you shouldn't go there anymore, because he's a Mahabhagavat, pure devotee of the Lord, and you don't understand, you will only make offenses in your mind. And so now, okay, clearly if somebody does this, we have our Pancharatrika Vidhi, which is one part of the scripture which explains how we worship the deities. And it's not mentioned that one should bind a rope around the deity, and it's actually an offense. So, but he's not following that. He's not following Pancharatrika Vidhi. But still he's following something. He's following the higher, the Bhagavat Vidhi. So maybe we can briefly touch on that. There is the highest injunctions in the scriptures is called the Bhagavat Vidhi. And what does the Bhagavat Vidhi say? It says, you just hear and chant about the Lord and remember Him. That's it. That's the perfection of life. You remember the Lord and you do it by hearing and chanting. You chant the holy name, you read Bhagavatam. So that is enough to be situated on the perfect Krishna conscious platform. But then, because we are conditioned living entities, we are not on that platform, then the scriptures give us a way how we can come to that platform. So if we are not on that platform, if we are not able to constantly remember Krishna and just hear and chant, then the next level comes, and that's the Pancharatrika Vidhi. Okay, you cannot do that. Then you worship the deity, you offer nice foodstuffs, you accept prasadam nicely, and in this way your field of activities gets wider, and you can engage your conditioned nature to get purified, so that eventually you are able to actually always remember Krishna. And so then some devotees, also in ISKCON we see, that's sufficient for them. Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Meaning some devotees, they are happy just worshipping the deities, living in the temple, chanting, reading, doing preaching activities, and everything which is cleaning the temple, everything connected to the worship of the deities. But then some, they can't do that. They have more desires. They want to have relationship, they want to have a family, they want to earn money. So then the Vedic scriptures, the Varnashram Dharma comes in. And the devotee has to understand where he or she is standing, and then according to that take the scriptural injunctions in order to understand what's right action, what's wrong action. And at this point we can speak a little bit about Ramananda Roy. So maybe we can introduce Ramananda Roy to understand who is he. Ramananda Roy was one of the most intimate associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's described that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had 3.5 most confidential associates with whom he would basically share everything. And do we know who these devotees are? Any idea? Like Ramananda Roy is one. Yes. So his sister is considered as half. Yeah, so these 3.5 devotees, actually this is very, if you would say this in an outside world, in today's context, it would be considered highly sexist and a statement. Like the other day we were sorry, I just have to tell because it was funny, we were in the kitchen and we were cleaning on Sunday, and then there was a phone, remember? And the phone had sometimes the phones, they put some protection cover, and it was pinkish, little silver pinkish, and so the question came up, whose phone is that? And somebody was saying, some Mataji, and I think I was saying, Prabhu, you can't say it's sexist. Why are you just concluding that it could be anyone? Anyway, the problematic discussion which is going on. So Ramananda Roy, it's interesting when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Jagannath Puri, we heard the story. He came to the Jagannath temple, he fell unconscious, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya took him to his house, and he, brought him back to consciousness, and then because he thought he's a sentimental sannyasi, he actually taught him Vedanta for 7 days. 7 days. And after these 7 days, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually convinced him about the existence of the Supreme Personality of God, and he made him a Vaishnava after being a Mayavad. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he decided to leave, go on preaching tour, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told him, you should go and see Ramananda Roy on the way. Ramananda Roy is the most exalted devotee. He knows all the conclusions. He knows the highest conclusions of the Vedic scriptures. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you have the India, it's like this. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you look from your side, then Puri is somewhere in the west, east, and then he would go down and go all around up. And on the way he met Ramananda Roy. And they had a meeting on the bank of the river Godavari, and then they had a philosophical discussion in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asking and Ramananda Roy was explaining. And the question Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked was, what's the goal? What's the highest goal? I'm not sure anymore. We spoke about it recently. But what's the highest goal? And Ramananda Roy started to come up with the statements of the scriptures. And the first thing, or one of the first things he said, maybe even the first, was to follow Varnashram Dharma and to perform one's duty for the pleasure of Krishna. That's the highest. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, that's not enough. And this can be connected to the point of following Shastra. There is some devotees who take that statement and say, Varnashram Dharma is not important. It was proven in the discussion with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy. But actually the right understanding is Varnashram Dharma is important, but it's not the answer to the question of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what is the highest goal? The highest goal is to become an intimate servant of Krishna in Vrindavan and then actually aspire to be a gopi in the most intimate way. But still, Varnashram Dharma is not rejected, but it's not accepted as the highest. That's the understanding. And so the whole discussion is going on, and by this discussion, Ramananda Roy, he establishes the highest goal of life, and actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu establishes through the mouth of Ramananda Roy, meaning Ramananda Roy is speaking the truth, being empowered. And the two, they are so intimately connected with each other, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy, that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has to continue in his journey, it's very painful for them. And then what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he traveled all around India, and he came back on the same path, and he just came back to meet Ramananda Roy again. And do you know what he told him? Like why he wanted to see him again?
To reject his duty.
Excuse me?
To reject his duty and go to Puri to associate with Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah. He told him, you should come with me to Puri. I want you to stay with me in Puri. How beautiful, no? The Supreme Lord comes, wants you to stay with him. And so Ramananda Roy, he was actually working under another great devotee, King Prataparudra, who was the king in, I'm not sure if he was based in Puri or in Cuttack, Orissa, but I don't know where his main base was. Cuttack was the capital, so he was probably staying there. And he had a kingdom, and Ramananda Roy was one of the administrators, the governors in the place called Vidyanagar. And actually he was a Shudra. It's described he's a Shudra. He was kind of doing administrative work in working for somebody. And King Prataparudra, being a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and himself being very desirous to be in the association of him, he told him, of course, you leave your job and you stay with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was very happy. And Ramananda Roy went to Jagannath-puri, and then he stayed there with him for the remaining years of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's manifested pastimes. And there's a few things which we can say about Ramananda Roy that I was reading yesterday, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, although I am a sannyasi, my mind is sometimes perturbed when I see a woman. But Ramananda Roy is greater than me, for he is always undisturbed, even when he touches a woman. And there is one pastime, Ramananda Roy, he would write dramas, devotional dramas, and he would not only write the dramas, but then he would also arrange for them to be performed in front of Jagannath in the temple. And this would be performed by, I guess some kind of Bharatanatyam dancers. And Ramananda Roy was so transcendental that he would before the performance, he would decorate the bodies of the young ladies who would do the performance and touch their bodies and completely undisturbed. Right? That's described.
You wash them.
He would wash them. So here we can also see it's definitely some transgression in the Vedic law, but for a higher principle. And so then they would perform in front of Jagannath. And Ramananda Roy also used to, especially in the final years, he would be with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu together with Swarup Damodar constantly. And how would they serve the Lord? What was their, like...
Sing, personally to support the Lord mood.
Yes. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came, with this desire to himself taste the mellow of devotional service. So he needed some assistance for that. And these two devotees, they were constantly quoting verses and singing songs in order to absorb his mind, help him to become more and more absorbed. And who is Ramananda Roy? Does anyone know? Okay, he's Vishaka. Who else? He's more than just one personality, which is quite hard to conceive how it's possible, but that's how it's described. I can try to, maybe you will get it when I describe. Ramananda Roy had 4 brothers, who, like usually these personalities are also somebody in Krishna Lila, like Vishaka, and who had also 4 brothers and was very intimate to Krishna. Arjuna, yeah. So Bhavananda Roy is the father of Ramananda Roy. It's described he used to be Pandu, and then Ramananda Roy used to be Arjuna, and the brothers were the other Pandavas. And we also can see in the Krishna Lila how intimately Arjuna was connected with Krishna. So, but then in Jagannath Puri, and I was reading that actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that he's Vishaka, that in Jagannath Puri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was manifesting this mood of Radharani. So then Ramananda Roy, he was like Vishaka assisting her. He would assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, very glorious day. It's the disappearance day of Ramananda Roy. And yeah, we can meditate about this. We are in New Jagannath Puri. It's actually non-different to Jagannath Puri. And in this way we can understand, maybe, hopefully, Mahaprabhu a little bit better and his associates. And hopefully we also pleased Mahaprabhu by speaking and glorifying about Ramananda Roy today, who is so dear to him. And does anyone else have something to say about Ramananda Roy, which I might forgot? Then thank you for your attention. Yeah, like the point which was being made in the purport, how important it is to not act whimsically, to follow the Vedic injunctions. And yeah, we are devotees, but we have to be careful to follow properly. And especially when we look at our acharyas, we look at the Lord himself, they never act adharmically, and so neither should we act in a way which is contrary to the Vedic principles, for ourselves, to purify ourselves, but also to give the example for the common people. Thank you. Srila Ramananda Roy Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Prema. Discussion is happening, but then I read Bhaktivinoda Thakur Young Purport. He was giving a quite nice verse of condition.
And also Damodar was the person who changed the desire of Chaitanya not to meet Prabhupada.
Right. Yeah.
It was really key because Prabhupada gave very nice pension to the same as his salary as the government of Madras.
Madras. Yes.
And Prabhupada gave him the same salary as he was working.
As before.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, and said that he was very much position.
Probably one question I wanted to ask you this question, but it was not time. What posture or what position we have to take when we hear that some devotees like this way of approaching Krishna through the mood of the roses, and other devotees like to approach Krishna through the mood of Varnashram? I see practically in my life when I go to India, Mayapur and Vrindavan have two different moods. No? Mood of Mayapur for me is more like Varnashram, more family mood, and mood of Vrindavan is more like spontaneous. And there are also some devotees, no, that I know that they are very fond into gopi mood, you know, and all these things. So when we talk about Krishna to people, what approach we have to take, you know, because sometimes people can get confused, and this gives the opportunity to some also cheaters to start preaching gopi. What do you call it?
Gopi Club.
Yes, yes. And could be a little bit attractive, could be a little bit fascinating, but at the same time quite cautious, quite careful now approach, because if we are not in the right mentality, the right conscious, then we can become crazy. No? So what can we say about this?
You can say so many things.
No, but that's the problem, you know. We can say so many things, but what is advice, no, to say to people?
I mean, I think your question is that some they relish this gopi path, but then the question is how. You know, if they read about it and all that, it's not forbidden.
Yeah.
But then the question is how do they act? Like if they
That's the thing. Yeah.
if they have illicit relationships and all that, then you could tell them this is not proper. And actually